Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all you folks out there. Thank you so much for joining us here on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Nipasa Pradhan and I'm going to be your host for the next hour. And we're going to have a fun time discussing about something very important related to immigration and jobs. And I'm sure if you be with us, you're going to benefit from this webinar. So thank you so much once again. And before we start off, and before I tell you about our topic of discussion and our guest for today, I really wanted to read out this very important disclaimer. And that is by watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. Once again, welcome all of you folks to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show and to this very webinar where we are going to be joined by our very regular guest, and she is none other than Attorney Prashanthi Reddy, immigration attorney. Thank you so much for joining us once again, Prashanthi. Really good to have you again here today.
Same here, Nipasa. Looking forward to talking about the topic of the day.
Absolutely. And as you can already see on the screen, this is the topic of discussion for today: alternatives to the H-1B visa, options for skilled workers. So I'm sure this is going to be very beneficial for folks out there who have been trying their chance in the H-1B lottery and who are probably thinking about the other ways if they couldn't make it to the H-1B lottery. Well, thank you so much. And well, Prashanti, maybe you could give a sneak peek to our friends out there who have joined us. What can they expect from us in today's discussion?
We'll discuss today about the alternatives to H1. The reason this topic is important is because, as we know, the cap season is over unless there's another lottery,
Lottery.
which we don't know as yet. So we have to, if you want to bring in, if you're an employer and you want to bring in workers, then you need to know what alternatives there are to bring people in if you don't want to wait until next year, March, for the lottery again. And also, you can't depend only on H1 to bring your employees in because a lottery is a lottery. And you may make it in the lottery and you may not. So it's important to have alternatives, I think, whether you're an employee or a beneficiary. So that's what we're going to talk about. Alternatives to H1, and it's also apt because H1 season is now over and people are looking for other ways of getting their employees to the US.
Very well put, Prashanti. Thank you so much. And this is absolutely what we're going to speak about today, friends. I'll just say stay with us. And if you have any questions, no matter where you joined us from, right now we are streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you have questions related to immigration or jobs and maybe about your H-1B status, anything, feel free to drop them in the comments, and Attorney Prashanti will be very happy to answer them for you. Also, I mean, last week, Prashanti, we spoke about the Biden administration and everything, but a lot has happened since last week. If you remember, especially the attempted assassination for Donald Trump as well. So, I mean, with the heightened political tensions that are following up everything after that, what do you think, about the upcoming debates or border and immigration policy between Biden and Trump? Do you think how is it going to shape the public perception now and even the political direction? Maybe what are your thoughts on this?
Again, and without getting too political and trying to stick to what's our forte, which is immigration, and not getting into politics and political analysis too much. But it's a fair question from the point of view of how it's going to affect immigration. And, pretty much we know the present Republican government will be anti immigration because they have said that over and over again that they're not going to soften their stance on immigration. So we can expect that it's going to become more difficult for deserving people to immigrate to the United States.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also another thing is, of course, the same thing, the recent incident that happened, and the addition of JD Vance to 2024 ballot as his running mate, Trump's running mate. How do you foresee this impacting the overall, discourse and even the actions, legislative and surrounding immigration policy, even?
So, JD Vance is not going to make any difference. He is basically towing the party line, and the party presently is very anti-immigration. So, JD Vance, no matter what he actually believes in or what he used to believe in, now he is towing the party line. So now he doesn't believe in immigration, whether it be legal immigration or asylum or any kind of immigration. So I am not. It makes no difference in what they intend to do with reference to immigration, and it's not good.
Okay. Okay. Well, friends, I think we'll just have to wait and watch. There is some more time, some more months for you to decide on who to vote. But definitely check out everything, all the updates, and exercise your vote for sure. Let's move on. I mean, today we are here for this topic of discussion, which is alternatives to the H-1B visa. So, without further ado, I think it's time we dive right into this topic. And for that, I have this first question for you, Prashanthi. If you can explain why the H-1B visa is often considered to be failing and what alternatives, exist for skilled workers seeking employment in the United States.
Um, I guess the reason that it sometimes fails is depending on again which government is in power and what their policy is. The H-1B regulations are written, and you have to stay within the regulations no matter which party comes in and what instructions they give USCIS on processing of cases. But a lot of the H-1B regulations have not been written, a lot of the law is not in a regulation form. It's just a law, bills that have been passed, the Immigration and Nationality Act. So there is a lot of scope for interpretation. And there was a lawsuit called Chevron, which was bad for immigration because that judge's decision, that Chevron case, gave USCIS a lot of scope on interpreting, how the law should be or what the law means. And this was not immigration related, the Chevron case. It was basically talking about administrative organizations interpreting the law, right? I think that was the environmental an agency or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but that had an impact on immigration as well. So anytime we try to say something with reference to, oh, that's not the law and you're interpreting it that way, they will bring up the Chevron case and say that we have the right to interpret it. And so depending on which political party is in power, the gates open and close, and they become more stricter or less stricter with enforcing or approving H-1B petitions.
Mhm.
The good news is recently Chevron was overthrown, and the courts have decided that agencies have only a limited power to interpret the laws, and they have to be interpreted more strictly. And so that's good news. Now, when USCIS says that they can interpret it with their various memos that they publish every time, they want to interpret a law in a different way. We can push back and file lawsuits. So yes, that's the reason why H-1B. I think the H-1B system can sometimes be viewed as broken because the laws have not been
Yeah.
written properly. Regulations are not been written properly and not been defined properly, and that leaves a lot of scope for interpretation. The alternatives to the H-1, we have a lot of alternatives. Well, actually, the H-1 is the best visa really for many nationals.
Okay.
Um, it is the one of the main work visas available. You have other work visas available for other countries, but they're not for all countries. So you
Mhm.
have the TN visa available for Canadian nationals. You have the E visa available for Australian nationals, which to a certain extent they work the same as in the same way that the H works. For the TN, the designated occupations are mentioned in a document under NAFTA guidelines. And anyone who comes within those designated occupations then has to have the requirements also are mentioned in that guideline. So as that's how that is. It's not a specialty occupation like a H-1, but there's certain set guidelines for certain occupations which qualify for a TN. For example, for a software engineer, um, or a computer science engineer, they have a requirement for a bachelor's in computer science. And every designation is different. For the Australian visa, uh, the E3 visa, the Australian visa, it is very similar to the H1. It is based on specialty occupation, but that's available only for Australian nationals. But it's great if you're an Australian national, then you can make use of it. You don't have to file a petition with USCIS. You can approach the consulate directly and get a e-visa. TN is also the same thing. You don't even have to go to the consulate for a TN. You can go to the border and apply for a TN. In Mexico, it works a little differently. TN is available for Mexico as well, Mexico and Canada. For Mexican nationals, they have to go to the consulate and apply for a TN, but the requirements are the same. You also have the O visa, which can be used as a work visa, but very few people qualify for a O visa because it's an extraordinary ability visa. So, these are in a nutshell, I think some of the alternatives. Then you also have alternatives such as if your company is exempt from the H-1B regulation, from the H-1B cap, then you can file it at any point of time. And we can talk about that more a little later.
For sure, for sure. Well, you were talking about the O3, the extraordinary. Who is qualified as an extraordinary person who's eligible for this kind of visa?
The O visa is specifically for um, people
Maybe
who
if you
are
could
of,
just give some examples.
yeah, people of extraordinary ability. If you won the Nobel Prize, it's an extreme example, but then you qualify for an O visa. If you've won in any of the fields, it doesn't have to be a particular field. It can be in the field of sciences, it can be in the field of performing arts, it can be in the field of arts, like painting. It can be like you're a famous author. You could be a very famous, well-known businessman. You could be a singer, a dancer, a performer, as I said. You could be a
Mhm,
scientist who has done extraordinary thing. Extraordinary means you're in the top 1% of the population, right? So in your field, you
okay.
are extraordinary. Those people
Mhm,
qualify for a no. And there are many ways of showing that you qualify for a no. Say if you're a researcher, then you can show your research work, you can show your citations, you can show,
mhm,
you can do a write up and send it to them as to how your work is useful, to humanity.
mhm,
If you are, for example, a singer, you can say what about, you can submit the awards you've won, you can do a write up with all the different things that qualify you, like the memberships that you're in, and what is the criteria to become a member in those organizations. You can show that you've run certain number of awards and what is the criteria to get those awards. You can show if you're a celebrity, you can show your Instagram, your social media posts to show your fan following. You can show your IDMB rating if you're an actor to show, your number of movies that you've acted in, or TV shows, etc., and what your rating is there. So you have to document this,
okay.
and you can show that you have judged other people's. You act as a judge for other people's work.
Okay.
If you are a scientist or you are a researcher, you can show that you've taken part in many different
Decathlons or something.
right, something like that, or in you've exhibited your work in many events, you've given talks, you've exhibited your work in conferences, etc. So these are some of the ways of showing that you qualify. It's very similar to the EB1 green card category. The O category, I would say, is very, very similar.
I think in O category, you need to show that you're recognized for your work. Is it like award
You
section
have to
or
show, first of all, that you are extraordinary, and you have to show documented. Yeah, you have to document that as well.
right, right. Thank you for those examples. Very interesting. So, folks, there you go. Maybe you will know better which category you actually fall in. So why not get to know more about the different kinds of alternatives that you have for yourself apart from the H-1B? All right. Should we move on to the next question then,
Yeah,
Prashanthi?
sure. Yes.
And this is about the cap exempt. What are cap exempt H-1B organizations, if you can explain that properly? And how can they benefit skilled workers who are unable to secure a standard H-1B visa?
So basically, H-1B alternatives, I mean, I'm sorry, with reference to who are cap exempt, that's one of the H-1B alternative. And with reference to, again, taking it back a notch so that people understand what this whole cap exempt is about.
Right.
The number of H-1Bs that are allotted every year are 65,000 plus 20,000 for master's category. So that's 85,000. So you have to, since it's already always oversubscribed, at the beginning of the year, they have registration process where you can register for the lottery, and then they hold the lottery. And if you get picked in the lottery, then you're able to file your H1. And they only pick the number of people that they require, right? So not everyone is picked in the lottery because there are only a certain number of H1B numbers available every year, correct? So that's the process for getting a H1B if you've never been on a H1 before. And it can be very difficult because the chances of getting in the lottery is about 25 to 30% over the last few years. So it's a very difficult process. But you do not have to worry about the lottery process, and you can file for your H1 at any time if you are cap exempt. You are cap exempt if your employer is cap exempt. And who is cap exempt? Just to give you a few examples. If your employer is a higher secondary institution, meaning if your employer is a university, then they're cap exempt. If your employer is a non-profit but affiliated to a university, so say you're a hospital, like any hospital that you can take, Cornell Hospital, they are affiliated to Cornell Medical College, so they are cap exempt. If you are a non-profit research organization, you are cap exempt. If you are a governmental research organization, you are cap exempt. So these are some of the few organizations that are cap exempt. So if you're working for any of these organizations, then you do not have to wait for the file a registration and file under the cap. You can file your H1 at any given point of time. Now remember, you don't have to be directly an employee of these organizations. One of these organizations can be your end client as well. So you can be working for a for-profit organization, but it could be that the final end client is one of these organizations. So then also you're cap exempt. So these are some of the cap exempt organizations that are available as per the regulations.
Okay. And about the second part of the question, how can they benefit skilled workers who are unable to secure a standard H-1B visa?
I mean, that's obvious. I mean, if you're not able to work on a H1 through the cap process because it's so difficult to get under the cap. So people who don't work for cap exempt organizations will have to then file for the registration every year and
Mhm.
try their luck in the lottery every year. And sometimes, they are not able to wait for that long of period of time. Most of them are student visas on an F1 status, and their F1 status can expire. It's not like an F1 status is indefinite, right? So uh, sometimes the people are filing 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row, and they still don't get picked up in the cap. So
Right.
obviously, if you file with a cap exempt organization, you don't have to worry about that, and you don't fall out of status, or you don't have to leave the country. So that is,
Right.
an obvious benefit.
Thank you. Thank you for clearing that out for us, Prashanthi. Thank you so much for taking that question up. I'll just quickly say hi to our audience who have commented and who have asked questions. Please stay with us. We will take up your questions. Big hello to all you folks, Akbar, Shaukat, Sawan, Prabhas, Neha, Geet, and Gunjan. We also have Karthik, uh, Ramudu, Rag. Thank you so much for all your questions and for joining us. We are going to take them up. I think we should just take one of them before we take all of them. Let's take Rag. Rag is asking on YouTube, will H-1B cap exempt applications face additional scrutiny at the consular interviews?
Good question, and sometimes they do. When it's consular processing cases, USCIS sometimes approve these cases more easily than they would approve an extension or transfer or an amendment because they know that they will have to go to the consulate and they will face scrutiny there as well. So, yes, I think they do face a lot of scrutiny at the consulate.
Thank you for taking that up, Rag. I think that answers your question. If you have any further questions, you can comment again. All right. So now getting back to my questions for you, Prashanthi, I'll go on to this next question. And if you can elaborate on the EB1 extraordinary visa and how it serves as an alternative for highly skilled workers.
So the employment-based category visa that you're talking about is a green card. It's an immigrant visa. It's not a non-immigrant visa. This can
Okay.
help people immigrate on a green card directly, so they don't have to navigate the H-1B scenario, and then get onto a H-1 and then file for a green card and then stay on a H-1 until they actually get the green card while they're in the United States. Here
Mhm.
they can possibly, as an alternative to a H-1, apply directly for a EB-1 while they're outside the country, and then get a green card and come into the country. For Indian nationals, it doesn't work as well because there is a backlog for EB1 as well, but not as bad. A couple of
Mhm.
years, but still might be worth it if you don't want to get on a H1, and because the H1 is difficult to maintain status because the regulations are so strict. Um, so EB1 is an alternative for Indian nationals if they want to wait a few years. And for other countries, it's current. So even if you belong to the other South Asian countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan, right, Sri Lanka, it's current for them as well. And everybody else, EB1. So definitely makes sense to, if you qualify, and there are many ways of qualifying for EB1. It could be extraordinary ability, it can be based on your research, if you're an extraordinary researcher, or it could be extraordinary ability in the arts, extraordinary ability in any field, really. Or it could
Mhm.
be that you're working as a multinational executive, like you're L1 based multinational executive. You can, instead of coming on an L1 and then moving to EB1, you can come directly on an EB1. So if you have a company in the US and a company abroad, and you worked for the company abroad as a top executive, then you can get transferred here. You can file for an I-140 directly for any kind of EB1, whether it be extraordinary or multinational executive. And once the I-140 gets approved, you can then file for an immigrant visa at the consulate and then come directly on a green card once you get the green card. So EB1 is definitely useful for those who qualify for it.
Okay. But even the O visa are for extraordinary
Correct.
folks,
That's a
right? So
non-immigrant visa. That's a non-immigrant visa, and this is an immigrant visa. This gives
immigrant,
you
that's
a
the
green
main
card.
difference.
Yeah, this gives you a green card. That is just gives you O1 status, which doesn't give you a green card.
Okay. All right. Thank
And
you. Thank you
O1
for
is,
clearing that up.
so it's basically one is temporary and one is permanent.
Okay. Interesting. So many different kinds of visas, but folks, there are really so many out there. I mean, you don't have to feel disheartened if you couldn't make it this time in the H-1B lottery, and let's still hope for the best. Who knows in lottery? Moving on to this next question I have for you, Prashanthi. What are the requirements and benefits of the O1 extraordinary visa as an alternative for skilled workers? I think
I
we
think we
spoke about
discussed
this
that. Yeah,
already.
yeah,
Maybe,
Nipasa.
yeah,
Let's go to the
we
next one.
already discussed the requirements, but what about benefits? Requirements we've already spoken.
I think
Any
benefits also
specific thing that comes?
well, the benefit is that you're coming on a non-immigrant work visa and you don't have to depend on the H1 because the H1 is difficult to get. So that's the benefit.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to the next question. And my next question to you is if can H-1B dependents legally work in the USA and what alternatives are available for them if they cannot work?
Yes, they can work if they are on a H4, and if the spouse has an I-140 approved, then the principal spouse has an I-140 approved, and their spouse can apply for a H4 EAD, employment authorization document, and they can work. There are, of course, advantages. The advantage of being on a H4 EAD is you can work for any company, so it's actually better than a H1 where you have to work for a specific company. The disadvantage of the H4 EAD is you have to keep renewing it, and the processing time for a H4 EAD is very long. So sometimes you might end up having to stop work while your H4 EAD is pending, and that happens often. The workaround is that if you're filing the H4 EAD and the H1 together, then usually they approve everything together. There is case law which says that they need to do that, though USCIS doesn't always follow it. But that's what it is. So filing together is an advantage, and the disadvantage is when you don't file together, processing time sometimes is 12 months, 14 months, a long time.
Yes, right. Well, we just took up a question from the audience from Rag, and Rag has a follow up. Cap exempt H-1B versus L-1, which is easier and has better chances process wise, provided I'm eligible for both?
I think L1 is better because L1 then will lead to an EB1 green card, and especially if you're an Indian national, you want to be on that EB1 bandwagon because the EB2 and EB3 are so backlogged. So L1 is better because it leads to the EB1. And
Right.
if you qualify for both, then
Yeah, thank you for your questions, both your questions. And for the rest of you folks, please stay with us. We are surely going to take up your questions. But now I got another one for you, Prashanthi. And there are concerns, that companies could exploit workers on an H-1B visa because they have to leave the country if they become unemployed. How valid is this concern, and what protections are in place for these workers?
it's a valid concern because they are at the mercy of their employers, and sometimes they don't pay them, sometimes they underpay them. And the problem is USCIS then will punish the workers as well, but will punish the employers as well. But then the workers uh, are unintended targets as well, and they bear the brunt of it because they fall out of status, and then they have to leave the country and they have to leave their homes, leave their life that they have here. So they are they, I think, face more difficulties than the employer does because it affects them directly.
Mhm,
So that's the problem with the H-1B program. It's employers have all the powers. And previously,
mhm,
the way it used to be is that even if you're out of status, even if you're not working for one day, you're out of status. Now, at least, they've come up with the 60-day grace period a few years ago. And the 60 days grace period pretty much says that if you are, uh, if you have been laid off, or even if you choose to leave your employer because you don't want to work with them, you have a 60 days period to find another employer to file your H1. And if you fall out of that 60 days grace, then you have to either leave, or you still have the option of filing for a change of status before the 60 days is over. You can perhaps change to a F1 and then work on an F1 on OPT or CPT, curricular
mhm,
practical training or optional practical training. So that's one way of doing it. Or you can just change to a B2 and get a visitor's visa, get some more time to find a job, and then change back from a B2 to H1. So the 60 days grace period definitely helps, and then there is an option to change status, and that helps to a certain extent as well.
absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Prashanthi, for taking that up for us. And it's definitely a concern. Everybody is about this. Okay, we have this one on YouTube from Sasi asking, sorry, on LinkedIn, not on YouTube. Was there any other visa to come into United States rather than H-1B to work in United States?
Not if you're an Indian national. I'm not sure if they are an Indian national or not, but if you are not an Indian national, then if you're from Canada or Mexico, you have the TN. This is an
Mhm.
option available for citizens of Canada or Mexico, and it's not subject to a cap, so there are no numbers. You can do it at any point of time. It's fairly easy. You can apply at the border, as I said, and it's based on certain designated occupations that are in a document, in a NAFTA document. So as long as you fall in within those designated occupations and you have the qualifications based on that document, then you qualify. You can also apply for an E3 Australian visa. You also can do if you're from Singapore or Chile, then you have the separate quota of 10,000, I believe, for Singapore and Chile. So they have a separate cap. It says H-1B, but they have a separate cap for them. So there's an Australian visa, which is E3, which is very similar to the H1. You have to be, it's a specialty occupation, but it's easier to get than a H1 because you don't have to file with USCIS. You can file directly at the consulate and get a visa approved there and come into the US. Once you're in the US, then you can file for an extension or transfer uh, with USCIS by filing a I-129 petition. So that's available if you're from Australia. If you're from some other countries, designated countries, and again, India is not included, you can apply for an E1 or E2 treaty trader or treaty investor visa, meaning you're either an employee or you're an owner and you've invested a certain amount of money or your employer has invested a certain amount of money in the US to start up a business and you're coming here in the U to take care of that investment. So that's the E1, E2. Of course, you have the F1, as I was mentioning, OPT, CPT. If you are a student and you are presently studying, then you can apply for curricular practical training if your university allows it, and that can allow you to work and study at the same time. If you've completed your F1, your degree, and you're qualified for OPT, optional practical training, this is done after you've completed your degree, then you get 1 year of OPT and you can work there. If you are STEM, meaning if you've done a STEM degree, then you can get an additional 2 years of OPT, which is called STEM OPT. So you can work in the US for 3 years. So that's counted as an alternative also. And as I was saying, you can also come directly on an EB1 and a green card and work here as well. And you can also
Mhm.
work as a cap exempt, as I was saying previously, if you are hired
Yes.
by a cap exempt organization.
Yes.
Another
Thank you so much for
interesting,
taking that. Yeah.
another interesting thing is even if you're working for a cap exempt organization part time, it could be only 5 hours a week. You can then apply for a cap subject H-1B petition as a concurrent petition. So as long as the second petition is concurrent, this
Mhm.
is one way of doing it. You can work for a nonprofit maybe over the weekends, and then during the week you could possibly work for a for-profit organization, and that way beat the system, uh, especially if you haven't been able to make it in the lottery.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for clearing that out and giving us a very good spectrum of choices that you can make for Sasi. Sasi, thank you for your question. Very interesting one. And if you still have further questions, you can always keep commenting. But for folks out there who want to get in touch with Attorney Prashanthi Reddy directly, why don't you give her a call or email her and give her your whole study, your whole case study, and maybe she could help you out. And her number is here. So you can reach out to her on this number, and that is 212-354-1010. And you can even email Prashanthi, that is Prashanthi at readyesq.com. And definitely go visit her website, readyesq.com, to get to know more about Prashanthi Reddy and the law offices of Prashanthi Reddy. All right, we'll just go for a quick break now, but don't go anywhere because we are going to dive deeper into this topic of today, which is alternatives to the H-1B visa. And we are going to get to know of more options, though we've already discussed a lot. There's so much more to discuss, so don't go anywhere. This is Nipasa Pradhan. We'll just go for a short break on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show.
Consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H-1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry, exceptional employee benefits, highly rated by our employees, global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us in the number 408 335 6444 or mail us at nipa@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www.higheritpeople.com.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. This is Nipasa Pradhan, and this is the second half of this webinar we are having today with none other than immigration attorney Prashanthi Reddy. And it's been such a great time so far, so good. We have been discussing about alternatives to the H-1B visa and the different options for skilled workers out there. So many questions we've already taken up, and also from the audience. Thank you so much for all your interesting questions. We are going to definitely take each one of them if possible. But quickly now, Prashanthi, if you're ready for another question.
Yeah, should we take a question from the audience?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we can.
Because we're
All
more
right.
than
So
halfway. Yeah, let's do some questions.
okay, we'll take up some questions from the audience now then. This one is from Ramudu. He has many questions. This number one question is: my valid visa expires 6 years H-1B quota on September 15, 2024, and perm applied on 29th May 2024. Considering kids' education, I want to stay till May 2025. Please suggest.
Well, all I can do, Ramado, is say is that you should have applied for the green card before. You've had 6 years, so a little planning is required. Everyone who's here in the US, when they come here, it's important to plan your immigration out properly and the path that you're choosing to take. Sometimes we get so busy with work and other things that we leave immigration somehow becomes like second priority, but need to plan it. As you have a finite time on a H1, you know that you need to file a green card or at least an I-140 and get it approved before that 6 years expires. So typically you should start filing for your green card at least in the second half of your H-1B journey. So when your 3 years are left, if not starting immediately, at least in the first 3 years, fine. Then the next 3 years, decide on an employer, stick to them, and
Mhm.
file that green card. But for this question particularly, um, I mean, you have to file. You cannot file for an extension beyond 6 years unless you have an I-140 approved. Looks like you
Mhm.
don't have much time because September is 2 months away. You filed your perm only in May, so that will take about a year, 12 to 14 months to get approved. I
Yes.
mean, uh, maybe not a year, maybe about 6, 7 months. Even then, that will take us to May, June, July, August, September, to October
Yes.
or November. So uh, you can consider leaving the country, taking a long break for 2 or 3 months, and then coming back to the US and filing for recapture. If you have not already filed for recapture, then file for recapture of remaining time. In the last 6 years, I'm presuming that you spent time outside the country. So if you can get a few months back, then you might just make it on time to file your seventh year extension.
Mhm.
If you so you can file for an extension based on two ways. One is an I-140 has to be approved, which we just noted that it might get
Yes.
approved only in October or November. So that's, you're talking about 2 months gap between the time your status expires and the time that you're ready to file the extension. Also, if your perm is pending for 1 year, then also you can file for an extension of 1 year. So, but that doesn't seem, 1 year is a long way off for you. So that option won't work out. So this one might, where you leave the country, or if you don't want to leave the country, then you have to file for a change of status for some time for everyone, and then change back to a H1 once your I-140 gets approved and you're eligible to file your H1 beyond 6 years.
Looks like a tough situation for Ramudu, but there are more questions. So let's maybe the next question from Ramudu is for my next extension, I have 4 months of recapture days. Now, is it okay for normal as my employer suggested, or should I go for premium extension?
Yeah, so if you have 4 months left, okay, so we should have taken up this question as well, then I wouldn't have had to explain everything. So,
Fine.
that's good that you have time left. So, as we were discussing, you can make use of that recapture time. And maybe then there'll be sufficient time for you to get the I-140 approved because you can do that in premium processing. I would suggest doing the 4 months extension in premium processing, because if you do it in regular processing, by the time you get the approval, um, it might be useless because you'll get the approval in 4 or 5 months or 3 to 4 months. So I think premium processing is a good idea so that you can again file an extension after that, after you get the approval in hand. Others, you might end up uh, that it's pending for 4 months, and when the approval comes, it cannot be used because the period is over already.
Hmm.
So do premium.
Okay. All right, Ramudu, I hope that explains your question. Moving on to this next one from the audience, and this one is from K. Sridhar. One of my friend is a famous movie director. He wants to bring his wife and kids to USA for education. Can he get the green card on extraordinary case?
Yes, he can. If he has won awards and if he meets the criteria, he can definitely do an EB1. EB1 is for everyone. People in the performing arts, directors. You can also do an O1 if he has a movie that he's going to shoot here in the US, or he has some work in the US related to his movies. He can also get a O1 to start off with. And the dependents can get O2 and then
Nice.
can study here. Or he can file
Mhm.
directly for a green card, which is the EB1, and come here on a green card.
Nice. Your friend is going to be able to come here with his family. So, case with her, that's a yes, a green light for you there.
Well,
Next
presuming
question.
that Nipasa, presuming that he qualifies,
Yes,
it is
presuming
definitely
that
an
he
avenue.
qualifies.
It's definitely an
Mhm.
avenue that can be explored.
So it looks like he will qualify, but documentation is very important. So document it properly, and best is to
Well, with
consult an attorney.
correct.
Yes,
With attorneys, it's never looks like, it's never maybe he will, and unless we look at the documents, we won't say either way.
yes.
So we just have to be careful with that. But yeah, I mean, it looks like you have a good chance and
Mhm.
a good case for such a green card, but we need to look into it further.
For sure, for sure. So every case is different and every detail is important. So
Correct,
so are the
correct.
documents. So friends, I think we have to be able to make sure about each one of them. All right. So yeah, let's move on now to the next question from the audience. Tata Atria. How long do I need to wait to apply for I-140 given my H1 is approved?
You don't have to wait for any time. You can file for the perm labor cert I-140 at any given point of time. There's no wait. You don't need to wait for any period of time to before you start your green card process.
Great. All the best. All the best. Thank you for your question and thank you, Prashanthi, for taking that up. Let's move on now to the next audience question. Let's see which one do we take. Sarath. Sarath is asking, do we know by when we will get to know if we might have a second lottery?
Uh,
Sorry for laughing. It's not funny. It's not a funny question. Yeah.
it's yeah, difficult to say. So I don't know the answer to it. Now that all the H1s have been filed, they should be looking into and see whether they've received any enough H1s or not. I'm hoping they'll let us know by August or September.
Yes. Sorry, Sarad. I didn't mean to laugh at you, but I was only smiling because this is a question which we do not miss on any webinar. So,
Ah,
yeah, and the answer is always the same so far.
always the
Yes.
same.
Yes. So I do hope that there'll be a better update very soon. But till then, definitely look out for our space. Look out in our space because we keep updating the latest updates. So our handle is Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Don't forget to subscribe to us. Thank you, Sarad. Nilesh now on YouTube is asking EB2 NIW for data analysis, approval chances from USA, and presently working in USA from last 2 years. So, what is the question? Is there a
He's being
follow
very
up?
cryptic. Very cryptic. I think he's asking whether it'll the chances of approval on for a data analyst. Um,
Okay.
so people and people are so desperate now because of the way EB2 and EB3 numbers are that every day I get every week at least I get 5 inquiries saying that, oh, this is my resume. Do I qualify for EB1?
Hmm.
Do I qualify for EB2 national interest waiver? You know, please remember that unless you are extraordinary, you don't qualify. And extraordinary doesn't is not a trick word. It's the definition that is in the dictionary, right?
Hmm.
If you are the top
Right.
1% in your field, you qualify. There is no way of making you qualify or writing a story that makes you qualify or making up this stuff. Either you are or you're not, right?
Hmm.
I am not extraordinary. I
Yes.
know that. I know I'm not extraordinary. I know I will not get a green card based on EB1, right? I can say that, okay, I was listed in Forbes, I've done this, I've done that, but I know I'm not in the top 1%, right? I have not. So you have to know what extraordinary means. There's no point in clutching at straws. I just feel bad every week telling so many people that they're not extraordinary. But most people are not. Most people are average Joes like you and me, right? So
Yes.
uh, if you are extraordinary, you'll know it because you will be famous, you'll be well known, you will be a celebrity most probably in your field. So if you're not, you're not. The only leeway that we have is with researchers. If you're a
Hmm.
researcher, then it's even if you're an average researcher, but you've done a lot of research, and if your research, if we can show that is useful to the US economy, to healthcare, to something, and if you've done certain amount of publications and journals and citations, then it's possible to then apply. You have a good chance of getting a EB1 for
Hmm.
a researcher category. But anything else, you really have to be extraordinary. So
I'm sure, Prashanthi. I mean,
you have to receive the
yeah.
top accolades, top awards that are given for people in your field, in that particular field. So
Mhm.
just remember that. So not everyone is. If you're a data analyst, and then nothing else, you know, even if you've received some of you employee of the month award or employee of the week award, that doesn't make you extraordinary because a lot of people have received that, right? It has to be something
Mhm.
that people don't receive. Top 1% is the key.
Yes.
Remember, top
Yes.
1%. And
There
some
you
people
go,
think,
friends.
oh, some people think that, oh, because they look at this like three criteria, they look at one criteria and say, oh, I've met this one criteria. And maybe we can somehow, fudge the rest, the other two criteria and make it seem like I am. No, there's no way of doing that.
Mhm.
And everybody picks on that high salary. Everybody thinks that they get a high salary. It's not about getting a high salary. It's do you have the highest salary within your space, for people of your cadre, because you're getting 350,000. It's not high salary if everybody else in that space is getting that, right?
Mhm.
So that's another thing to remember. So not everyone qualifies. So don't waste your time trying to qualify for an EB1. And there are a lot of people out there consultants and some attorneys as well who will say, okay, we'll file it, let's file it and see, and then try to make some case out of it, and it'll just get denied. And there's a lot of work involved in filing an EB1. So, get a good opinion as to whether you qualify or not. Even if you qualify, if I think you have a 50% chance of qualifying, I'm happy to do it, but most people don't. So, something to keep in mind.
Right. Extraordinary is the word, friends. Extra. So you know where to categorize yourself in. And of course, thank you so much, Nilesh, for your question. I hope it answers. I hope Prashanthi has answered your question. And if you have any further questions or clarifications to make, feel free to drop them in the comments. Um, all right. So, yeah, Prashanthi, I was going to say earlier, like you get, there must be so many people writing to you, and you may have so many cases where people are really, requesting you to make it work. What do you do on such situations when you know
You have
that
to
it has already failed?
you have to patiently explain to them, and then again, it depends on, not all attorneys will do that, right? Because some are filing the case for the sake of filing it so that they can get their fees, unfortunately. And but most attorneys will tell you what are your options, what are the chances
Hmm.
of approval. If some After I tell them that this is your chance of approval is 10%, and they still want to file it, then okay, I'm willing to go ahead and file it, even though my heart is not in it, because I'm like, okay, they shouldn't be doing this. They shouldn't be wasting their time and their money, but I'm
Hmm.
still willing to consider doing it, as long as you put everything out there and tell them what the chances are, and how likely they are to get an approval. Then I think there's no harm in doing it if they want to give it a shot. But
Hmm.
it's important to let them know, not just take their fees and tell them that, okay, it might get approved, let's see, let's file it. And at the end of the day, you want a happy client, you want an approved case, because no matter what you say to them previously, if the case is denied, they will be unhappy, and you don't want an unhappy client. So attorneys have to make these decisions, before they decide to take on a case or not to take it on. And this is what we struggle with on a day-to-day basis. So we just have to, take it case by case.
Right, right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prashanthi, for taking that up. And also, folks, I mean, thank you for your very interesting questions. Now let's move on to this next one. This is from Erez. If I got approved for an NIW EB2, might I be eligible fit for EB1A?
You might be, because the national interest waiver category, even though it's EB2, is very close to the EB1 category as well,
Hmm.
in extraordinary ability, and the criteria is just as difficult. It's just that the benefit is not that great because you're still finding yourself in EB2. But since you're self-petitioning, they want to make the criteria more difficult, and that's the reason it is. So I think you would, if you qualify for NIW, you would, I think, qualify for EB1A as well. And you should have actually tried EB1A first, because it's more beneficial for you than the EB2 NIW.
Right. Anyway, Erez, I think it's never not too late. You can always try, so give it a go. And thank you, Prashanthi.
You're
Let's
welcome.
move on now to this. There's a continuation, follow-up question. Sorry, this is from Sasi again. Can we file a new petition for H-1B second lottery?
If you get picked in the second lottery, then you can. Otherwise, you cannot.
Thank you for taking that up. All right. So I think we are almost done, but Sarath is asking, okay, we just answered. Are there any future possibilities for the US to provide a job seeker visa like Germany?
What does that mean, job seeker visa like Germany?
Job seeker visa like
So
Germany.
guys, you have to be a little more clear in your questions, and but I think I understand you're saying that
Possibilities of US
is
providing.
there a visa category for someone who is from Germany? No, there isn't. Is there a possibility? There's always a possibility. Is there something in the works? I don't see anything in the works for giving a special category of visa for Germany. The reason they gave it for Mexico and Canada is because they're border countries, I think. Not quite sure why
Hmm.
they gave it for Australia. But I not see anything in the works for Germany.
for Germany. But look out for it, Sarit. I think there'll always be updates. So yeah, also subscribe to us. Maybe we are okay. Now Sarit is saying, come to US and search for a job. Clarifying his question for, yeah, it answers. That answers. All right, yeah. And Gunjan's question now, since we just displayed on screen. My friend, a DevOps engineer with 8 years of experience, works for Cisco full time. His manager implied that the project may conclude in 3 months and he needs to find alternative employment. However, the follow up for Gunjan, please. However, my friend has only 3 years remaining on his H-1B visa. He inquired about filing I-140 last year, but his employer kept postponing it due to layoffs. What options does he have to complete the I-140 process?
Well, he has 3 years remaining on his H1, right?
Oh, yes, but it's a long question. So, the process before reaching his H-1B limit, and can he change to F1, file for EB2 NIW through a consultancy, or switch to F1, obtain a job, and then revert to H-1B? Your help will be much appreciated.
So let's go back to the fact scenario. The project may get over, fine. Next slide. But even though the project gets over, you can always file for a H1 through another company. You can file a transfer, and you have 3 years remaining on your H1. So you have plenty of time to file your labor cert and I-1 for the I-140 to get approved. So you should go with the traditional, whatever it may be, EB2 or EB3, whatever you qualify for, and do your labor cert and get the I-140 approved as soon as possible so that you qualify for H1 extension beyond 6 years. So you don't have to go through with national interest waiver, change to an F1. I think you have plenty of time to file through the regular process and get it approved before your 6 years gets up.
Great. Thank you so much for taking that up. Gunjan, a good question, a long one, but I do hope that you got your answer and you know what to do next. All right, let's move on now to the next question. Maybe one last question or last two questions from the audience, and we'll be done for today. So this one is okay. Errors is continuing. If I won't the H-1B in the last lottery but didn't apply, if there's a second lottery, will I be able to apply again?
If I won the H1B in the last lottery but didn't apply, is there a second lottery? So basically, his question is if he got selected in the lottery but did not apply by June 30th when he was supposed to apply, if there
Yes,
is a second lottery, can he then apply? No, first of all, you won't be selected in the second lottery because you were already
already
selected.
was selected.
It's selected,
Yes,
so you'll be removed from the registration thing and you will not be put into the lottery again.
second lottery process
Yeah,
again.
and
Yes.
if you did not file your H1 within the time period you are supposed to file it, then that's it. You cannot file it later. So now you'll have to file for your lottery again next year, get selected, and then file it within the time period given.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that's all for today. We've taken up almost all the questions from the audience. I'll just say thank you so much, everyone. There's a last one. This one is from Niger asking, I think job seeker visa is a visa to come to the country and search for a job. Yes, that's right. So we've already answered that. Thank you so much, Niger, for your thought on the question previously asked.
There's no such thing as a job seeker visa. Just to
Mhm.
clarify, you can come on a visitor's visa and look for a job, but there's no such thing as a job seeker visa
Job
where you
seeker
can.
visa, right.
There's no such thing. Sorry,
Mhm.
but you can come on a visitor's visa and look for a job, and
Look for
then
a
leave the
job.
country, and then apply for a H1. Follow that route.
Mhm. Right, right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, really, folks. And I would say definitely get in touch with attorney Prashanthi Reddy if you need an attorney to consult your case with. So why not give her a call or send her an email about yourself. Her number is 212-354-1010, and her email address is prashanthi@reddyesq.com. You should also go visit her website, reddyesq.com, where you'll get more details about Prashanthi Reddy and the law offices of Prashanthi Reddy. Well, Prashanthi, thank you so much for covering this topic for us today. And maybe before we leave, you could just end it with a very short end note to leave the audience with a little hope, maybe.
I mean, we're talking about H-1B alternatives, right? That's our topic today. So they
Yeah,
are alternatives as we discussed. It's just a matter of finding which one applies to you and maybe looking for jobs with H-1B cap exempt organizations. You might have to take a pay cut because nonprofits don't pay as much. But having said that, if you want to remain and make a future for yourself, that might be a way of doing it, at least for the temporary period of time where you don't get selected under the cap. Once you get selected under the cap, of course, then you can choose a for-profit company. So that's a tip that I can leave for you with reference to what to do if you don't get selected in the lottery.
for sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a great session, very insightful, and we learned a lot today. So thank you so much, Prashanthi, for doing this again. And it was such an honor and a pleasure to have you back again here with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here and looking forward to seeing you next week.
Me too. I'll see you next week then, next Wednesday. Friends, Prashanthi makes it a point to visit us every Wednesday at 12 p.m. EST. So definitely look out for her. And thank you so much, Prashanthi. You have a great day ahead.
Thank you. You too.
Right, EDT, Eastern Daylight Time, since we are. All right. Thank you so much, friends. Thank you for joining us today. And definitely check out Prashanthi Reddy once again. And also, thank you for all your questions. You made this webinar an even more interesting one with all your questions and concerns that you put on our plate today. So thank you so much. Also, you can contact me if you are looking or if you want to discuss anything about immigration and jobs. You can also WhatsApp me on 408-335-6444, and my email address is nipa@hirightpeople.com. And to get to know more about us, definitely go visit our website, www.hirightpeople.com. And if you're especially, we sponsor H-1B, H-1B1, E3, OPT, and TN visas. And definitely just reach out to us, friends. It'll be really nice to get in touch with you. I'm also there on LinkedIn. My name is Nipasa Pradhan. And otherwise, we are on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Our handle is Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Don't forget to follow us, subscribe to us, and stay in touch with us. Thank you for joining us today. This is Nipasa Pradhan signing off for now. But stay tuned to our space because we have so many interesting discussions coming up and important news coming up. So look out. Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. This is Nipasa Pradhan signing off for now.
Consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H-1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry. Exceptional employee benefits. Highly rated by our employees. Global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us in the number 408-335-6444 or mail us at nipa@hirightpeople.com or visit our